So the new M1 iPad Pro has been launched, and now the question is, who should be getting it? Anyone who wants to use it professionally. Thank you for watching. Just kidding, there's a lot more to it than that. Let's ramble.
Hold up, place go wild when I pull up. They all on me like it wants them.
Hey, what's up guys? It's great to see you all again. And if you're new here, I'm Patrick, and this is why I ramble about tech and other stuff. Okay, so before we start, I would like to take a moment and say a massive thank you to all of you guys who subscribe to the channel. Today, we hit 10,000 subs, and to be honest, I still can't believe it. It was actually the iPad Pro that got this channel started, and I uploaded my first video 1 year ago. So to circle back to the iPad with you guys 1 year later is just perfect. It's been an amazing ride, and I'm super grateful to have you guys along for it. So thank you once again. So this new iPad, I mean, it's something else. If you've been to this channel before, you know I've been updating you guys with leaks and rumors in the run-up to the event, and it definitely was a turbulent ride. And of course, rumors are only just that, rumors. We're never 100% sure which of those rumors will materialize until the actual product is announced. And let's be honest, we have been disappointed in the past. Not this time, boys and girls. This time, it's the real deal. Now, before we get into the question of whether you should be buying this new iPad Pro, and if so, which one, let's have a look at all the new specs. Probably the biggest surprise at the April event was the iPad's chip. We had high expectations of a new chip called the A14X, which would have been on par with the M1 chip that we find in the current Mac lineup. I think all of us went when we saw Uncle Tim place the actual M1 chip inside the iPad in that legendary scene. Having a chip that powerful in a body this thin is just taking the tablet game to a whole new level. Now, this doesn't mean that the iPad will be exactly as powerful as the M1 Max. Apple had to reduce the wattage on the M1 chip to prevent it from overheating inside that slim chassis, and also to make sure that the battery stays at that 10-hour mark. But it is still going to be a massive improvement over the old chip, and the iPad's performance will be getting very close to that of the Max. The second major upgrade on the new M1 iPads is of course RAM. One of the biggest performance hurdles for the 2020 iPad Pro has been the fact that it tops out at 6 GB of RAM. And while that's nothing to snarl at, it is what's been standing in the way of the iPad Pro becoming a true pro device, running real pro apps. The new iPad Pro will start at 8 gigs of RAM on the base models and a whopping 16 gigs of RAM on the higher-end, higher storage models. Now imagine what this device will be capable of combining the new powerful M1 chip with the 16 gigs of RAM. I mean, this device is just screaming for pro apps, and we will talk about that a little bit later. But let's move on to the third massive upgrade, which is the Thunderbolt port. In my opinion, this is the most underrated new feature on this device. It changes everything. I've been hammering on about how I believe the iPad Pro will be the future of computing and how Apple will make it their core device in the very near future, and I stand by that. So here we have the M1 chip, 16 gigs of RAM, and an incredibly fast port that not only opens up endless possibilities in terms of connectivity and data transfer, it also allows us to finally hook up the iPad Pro to an external monitor without seeing those hideous black bars, but making full use of the entire screen. In fact, you can even hook it up to the 6K Pro Display HDR and take full advantage of it. But that's not all. Because we now have that Thunderbolt port available, we can of course hook up the iPad to a powerful Thunderbolt hub like the CalDigit TS3 Plus I've been using to connect all my stuff to my 16-inch MacBook Pro. So now let's take a step back again and see what we have. We have the M1 chip, 16 gigs of RAM, and all the ports we could possibly need to connect whatever we want to the iPad Pro, including super fast SSD drives and any type of external monitor. Now this is starting to look an awful lot like a serious desktop alternative. Think about it. Just take my setup as an example. Everything on my desk, including my monitor, my external SSD storage, and my audio interface is connected to my CalDigit TS3 dock, which is connected to my 16-inch MacBook Pro. With this new iPad Pro, I could just remove my MacBook Pro, leave everything else as is, and put my iPad Pro where my MacBook usually goes, and everything should work. Now, like I said earlier, iPadOS 14 and the current lack of real pro apps make this an incomplete setup, and I could not use it to fully replace my Mac. But that might change very soon, and we'll get to that, but let's just finish up with the new specs and upgrades. The 12.9-inch version of the new iPad Pro will finally have that mini LED display a lot of us were super excited about. Apple calls it Liquid Retina XDR and claims it is actually on par with the $6,000 Pro Display XDR, and that is without the stand. And the 12.9-inch display will have a peak HDR brightness of 1600 nits, which is just insane. It also supports True Tone, which can be very easy on the eyes when you're using the iPad a long time. The iPad also has improved cameras on the back, and finally, Apple seems to have fixed one of my major pet peeves, which is the lousy front-facing camera and its ridiculous position at the top of the screen in portrait mode. Now, technically, they didn't move the camera's position, but through Apple's new center stage technology, the camera will always place the subject center of the frame using the wide-angle lens, which basically emulates it being positioned in the middle of the frame in landscape mode. The new iPad Pro will also support 5G, which can be useful, and lastly, it will have massive storage options up to 2 terabytes. And you have to choose one of those higher-end options if you want the 16 gigabytes, because this is only available on the 1 and 2 terabyte models. A huge surprise for me personally is the fact that the 11-inch version basically packs all the same goodies as the 12.9-inch version, except the mini LED display. All the rumors before the event suggested that the 11-inch would be only an incremental upgrade and all the good stuff was saved for the 12.9-inch model. And I'm glad to see this is not the case. I like the large display, but I know that a lot of people find the 12.9-inch model too big and they prefer the smaller one. So this is really great. Now back to our main question. Should you buy it and which one? Well, this is where it gets tricky, and I was only half joking at the beginning when I said that this new iPad is for pro users, because even though the base model is only a little more expensive than the current iPad Pro, if you want all the bells and whistles, prepare to shell out some serious cash. In my case, I'm looking at the 12.9-inch version and I would like the 16 gigs of RAM, so I'll have to get the 1 terabyte at minimum. And I'll be doing this grudgingly because, much like with my Macs, I prefer relying on external SSDs, which are just as fast and a lot cheaper. Anyway, let's configure it with the lowest possible high-end specs, which is the 1 terabyte storage, Wi-Fi only version. This will cost you $1,800 bucks, and that is if you live in the US. If you live anywhere else, it will be even more expensive. I'll be choosing the 5G version because I usually travel for work all the time, and hopefully we will be returning to normal in a not so distant future, so I will need to have access to the internet while traveling. And that configuration will cost $2,000. Wow, that's a lot of money. And I live in Europe, which will make this even more expensive. In fact, just for the heck of it, let's have a look at how much this will cost me in Belgium, where I'm based. The same setup will cost me 2,159 euros, which is $2,611.77. Damn, Apple, why you gotta do me like that? So unless you're planning to use this iPad all the time and for all your professional needs, I would actually be inclined to advise you to buy the 2020 model, which is still an amazing device and which will be dropping in price quite a bit. If you're just using it for media consumption, some note-taking, and even some light editing, it is a totally capable device. Obviously, if you're a total tech head and you have the money to burn, the 2021 is a much more powerful device and it will be more future-proof. But if budget is a factor for you and you're not really sure you will be needing all this extra power, don't buy it. Get the 2021. And even if you're intending to use it professionally, you're still taking somewhat of a gamble because we're not 100% sure that we will be getting pro apps. Honestly, I do think we will. I personally have very high expectations for iPadOS 15, and I dream of seeing at least a version of Final Cut Pro on this iPad very soon. But we won't know for sure until at least June. So if not having pro apps is going to be a deal breaker for you, I would advise you to wait at least until WWDC in June, which is when all the new software innovations will be presented and when we will know whether these new amazingly powerful iPads can actually live up to their full potential. Alright guys, I really hope this was useful to you. If it was, please give it one of these. It really does help the channel. Feel free to subscribe for more content. Thank you so much for watching and see you in the next one.